Game of Thrones has given us some crazy spin-offs since the series ended in 2019, and they are movies to watch for days. From having dragons all over the Seven Kingdoms to intense battle scenes and bloodbaths, these spin-offs show that HBO still has a lot in store for us. Over its 8 seasons, Game of Thrones became a massive cultural sensation. Despite mixed reactions to its finale, the show is still taking up more screens with new storylines that take us back years before or after the events of Game of Thrones happened. Sadly, only 2 of these Game of Thrones spin-offs passed the initial planning stages, and the first one we got is House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon is the first spin-off from Game of Thrones that takes us back nearly 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones. In this spin-off, we see a wild and bloody civil war within House Targaryen, where they fight each other to gain control of the throne. Due to the final season of Game of Thrones that wasn't liked globally, HBO faced a big challenge in bringing back the show's popularity. House of the Dragon was the ideal choice to bring viewers back. And it did just that! Thanks to its captivating narrative and connections to the beloved original series, the first season was a hit and even got an Emmy nomination. This success led HBO to quickly approve not just 1 but 2 more spin-offs, proving just how impactful House of the Dragon has been in keeping the saga alive. Nearly 9 million people watched the finale of Season 2, and many fans, including myself, are now eagerly looking forward to the release of Season 3, expected in 2026. Season 2 of House of the Dragon lived up to its initial promise, showing us details of the brutal Targaryen civil war. This season has brought some of the most dramatic and intense moments from the Fire and Blood book to life, setting the stage for what seems like an inevitable tragic conclusion. The show's success has secured a 3rd season and led George R.R. Martin to hint at the possibility of a 4th. However, with the 2nd season ending in August 2024, fans will have to be patient, as there's a lengthy wait before we can see how the Targaryen saga continues. For now, next up is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. After the hype from House of the Dragon, the next exciting chapter in the Game of Thrones saga is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, The Hedge Knight. This new series will dive into George R.R. Martin's first Dunk and Egg story. It is to kick off with Sir Duncan the Tall, a wandering knight, teaming up with a young lad named Egg, who becomes his squire. The duo sets off on an adventure to Ashford, where Dunk hopes to compete in a grand tournament. While fans of Game of Thrones might have been expecting the new show to keep its original book title, George R.R. Martin felt a change was necessary. More exciting news for fans: production for this 6-part series officially began on June 18th, 2024. So mark your calendars and prepare for another thrilling ride as the series debuts on HBO in late 2025. Set about 90 years before the events of Game of Thrones, the stories are not as grand in scope as the main series, but equally captivating. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. The Hedge Knight follows the adventures of Dunk, a humble hedge knight who will one day become Sir Duncan the Tall, the esteemed Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. His squire, Egg, will go on to become King Aegon, the 5th Targaryen of Westeros. George R.R. Martin plans to write up to 12 novellas, so this series could entertain us for quite some time. Excitingly, actors Peter Claffey and Dexter Sol Ansel have been cast to bring Dunk and Egg to life. If you think that will be mind-blowing, think again, because the next one has a little surprise for you. Aegon's Conquest. The name Aegon is well known in the Game of Thrones universe, largely due to Aegon the Conqueror. This legendary Targaryen and his sister wives Visenya and Rhaenys came from Valyria and dramatically conquered Westeros, riding powerful dragons. This epic period, known as Aegon's Conquest, occurs 300 years before the events of Game of Thrones. It's a chapter full of daring battles and fiery dragons fans have eagerly hoped to see since spin-offs were first considered. Aegon's Conquest is set to make a thrilling entry on HBO, with Mattson Tomlin leading its development. This exciting news hints that we might soon see the legendary conquest of Aegon the Conqueror unfold on our screens. During his conquest, Aegon the First Targaryen, also known as Aegon the Conqueror, successfully conquered 6 of the 7 kingdoms. Dorne was the only one who resisted his might. His victory marked the beginning of the Targaryen dynasty and led to him being the first king to rule from the Iron Throne. But guess what? This isn't the first attempt to bring this dramatic chapter of George R.R. Martin's universe to life. Back in April 2023, there were talks about possibly turning Aegon's Conquest into a movie. However, HBO has decided to go with a TV series format this time around. While there's no word yet on who will star or when the series will be released, the story draws from the rich details in Martin's book, Fire and Blood. Unlike House of the Dragon, which explores the decline of the Targaryen dynasty, Aegon's Conquest will go in the opposite direction, giving fans all the gist of their fiery rise to power. But HBO isn't just about making series and shows, they've got plans for some animation too, especially with a spin-off like The Golden Empire. Since January 2021, a new chapter in the Game of Thrones universe has quietly taken shape, an adult animated spin-off titled The Golden Empire. This potential series draws inspiration from the Golden Empire of Yi Ti, a mysterious realm in the far east of Essos, which is barely touched upon except in the World of Ice and Fire book. While fans of Game of Thrones are familiar with animated features through the histories and lore segments found in the show's DVD and Blu-ray extras, the Golden Empire promises to give fans a completely different perspective and broaden its narrative scope. According to George R.R. Martin, who has seen and praised the concept art, this show would offer a fresh portrayal of a society distinctly different from those in either Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon. Though details remain sparse and the project is not yet officially approved, Martin's involvement in shaping a story set in one of the most intriguing corners of his universe hints at a rich, expansive new saga. The excitement around its development suggests that The Golden Empire could soon bring the enchantment and complexity of Yi Ti to screens, exploring themes and settings like never before in the famed fantasy series. However, that wasn't the only one. There is also a plan for the Sea Snake. The Sea Snake is just another exciting animated project in the Game of Thrones universe. It is a spin-off that focuses on the adventurous tales of Corlys Velaryon, also known as the Sea Snake. Portrayed by Steve Toussaint in House of the Dragon, Corlys is famous for his daring oceanic explorations. His great voyages took him beyond the familiar environs of Essos to the mystical and lesser-known regions like Yi Ti, where he gathered great fortune. Initially planned as a live-action series, George R.R. Martin has indicated on his blog that if the Sea Snake receives the go-ahead, it will instead be animated, mainly due to budget considerations. This transition to animation promises to bring Corlys Velaryon's legendary voyages and the rich, untold stories of his exploits to life in a visually striking format. And there are still more plans. 10,000 Ships. 10,000 Ships is an exciting prequel that takes viewers back 1,000 years before the Targaryen conquest of Westeros. This series shines a spotlight on Princess Nymeria and her people, the Rhoynar, one of the foundational ethnic groups of Westeros, alongside the Andals and the First Men. The narrative begins with a devastating event, the destruction of the Rhoynar homeland by the powerful Valyrian Freehold. Forced from their home and facing unimaginable challenges, Princess Nymeria rises as a leader, guiding her people on an epic quest for safety and a new beginning. Their journey across the seas aboard what would famously become known as the 10,000 Ships is a tale of resilience and survival. The series promises to deliver a gripping adventure, exploring themes of loss, courage, and the search for freedom, all set against the vast and often dangerous backdrop of the high seas. Besides, legend has it that Princess Nymeria commanded an impressive fleet of 10,000 ships to navigate the mighty river Rhoyne, leading her people away from the dangers of Essos. While the actual number might be a bit of an exaggeration, there's no doubt it was a great effort and a remarkable journey. Nymeria's saga stands as one of the most celebrated tales in the history of Westeros, famously connected to Game of Thrones through Arya Stark's direwolf, named after the princess. Although no other members of the creative team, aside from Amanda Siegel, have been announced, the project seems to be gaining momentum after a period of uncertainty. Initially thought to be shelved, George R.R. Martin updated fans on his blog on June 11th, revealing a new twist in the production. Martin expressed his excitement and humor about the ambitious scope of the project, though he told fans jokingly that he was still trying to figure out how to pay for 10,000 ships, 300 dragons, and those giant turtles. Unfortunately, not every Game of Thrones spin-off announced has passed the drawing board. Hollywood is always buzzing with new ideas, but HBO is particularly picky about what it chooses to develop. It's public knowledge that 3 potential spin-offs were once in the works, but eventually got canceled. First on the list, Blood Moon. Before House of the Dragon became a hit, HBO was working on a different Game of Thrones prequel called Blood Moon. This show was intended to take viewers back 8,000 years before the events of Game of Thrones. In 2018, HBO even filmed a pilot for Blood Moon, which cost a whopping $30 million. Crazy. Blood Moon had some big names attached to it, including writer Jane Goldman, known for Kick-Ass, and Naomi Watts, who was set to star in the main role. The series was set to explore the Long Night, the mysterious period in Westeros' history that first introduced the Cold White Walkers. However, despite the excitement and investment, HBO canceled Blood Moon after only the pilot episode. The network had concerns about diving into another vast, intricate story so soon after Game of Thrones, especially given the mixed reactions to the original series finale. They worried about the risks of launching another narrative with little source material that might not fully satisfy the audience. Speaking about the audience, Jon Snow was a favorite, and there were plans for the Jon Snow Spin-off. One of the most anticipated series was focused on Jon Snow. Announced by HBO in June 2022, this show was set to explore the life of Kit Harington's character after the ending of Game of Thrones. The storyline follows Jon Snow as he deals with the aftermath of his painful decision to betray and kill Daenerys, leading to his exile beyond the Wall. Unfortunately, as of April 2024, the project was put on hold. Kit Harington revealed they couldn't settle on a compelling narrative for the series, which was a major challenge in continuing the story. There was also Flea Bottom spin-off. There was a plan to shine the spotlight on a less glamorous part of the city in a planned spin-off. The show was set to explore Flea Bottom, a notorious slum known for its brothels and rough taverns. Despite its reputation for poverty and crime, Flea Bottom was also the starting point for several important characters from the main series, like Davos Seaworth and Gendry. The spin-off promised to show us the daily struggles and stories of Flea Bottom's inhabitants, giving us a new perspective on the world of Westeros. However, the specifics of what tales were to be told remain a mystery, as the project was ultimately scrapped and no further details were given, leaving fans to wonder about the untold stories of this crazy neighborhood. While plenty of Game of Thrones spin-offs are currently in the works, fans have been clamoring for one potential spin-off since the early days of the series: the Robert's Rebellion. Do you remember Robert Baratheon? He was the king sitting on the Iron Throne before Joffrey took over. Well, back when HBO was brainstorming ideas for possible Game of Thrones spin-offs, a series about Robert's Rebellion was one of the ideas tossed around. This rebellion wasn't just any conflict. It was a fierce war among the great houses that led to the overthrow of Aerys II Targaryen, the Mad King, by Robert Baratheon, with the help of key figures like Ned Stark and Jon Arryn. House of the Dragon did explore a similar theme by telling fans details of a past war, but a series about Robert's rebellion would face the challenge of keeping viewers engaged, despite them knowing the eventual fate of many important characters. Even though fans are eager to dive into a series about Robert's rebellion, it seems unlikely that this chapter of Westeros history will make it to the screen. George R.R. Martin himself isn't too keen on the idea, and back in 2017, he mentioned that by the end of the main series, we'd know everything necessary about the rebellion, and producing a series about it might feel redundant, like a twice-told tale. Despite its potential to engage and entertain, discussions about turning this part of the saga into a spin-off have not progressed. Do you think we'd one day see some of these series in the cinemas?